Hello, Tynee is here, y'all. Hi, Tynee. I am so excited to have you on my show
Yeah.
because I have been on your show
hmm
and we have had our show.
We have had our show. You've been on my show. We've been on panels.
Yes.
So yeah, it's full circle.
I
It's a pleasure to be a guest on the Zaneta Show. It was
am so glad to
it
have
was inevitable that this would happen.
the stars always align for us to have good, enlightened conversation. And
Indeed.
what we always have in common is Flint, honey. Flint town.
Flint Town, Fly City, Flintstones. You already know.
Yes, so the Zaneta Show is about empowering women to stop waiting and start winning and to build the life that they want right now. And my entire inspiration for the theme of my show started by just assessing who I am. And I cannot be who I am without giving honor and respect to where I came from. So when it comes to how I move, how I operate, my perspective, and the things that I want for myself, that I also want for my city, it has been the fruit of being a native of Flint, Michigan. So when this topic
For
came
sure.
up, immediately I knew that we had to get back together because I know that you have a collective love of Flint as well.
For
So
sure.
that is beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you for coming.
I'm happy to be here. Yes, our collective love for Flint, it runs deep. So deep. It's really it's the heart of me. It's who I am. It's without Flint, I'm not this version of Tynee without Flint. I'm not community minded without Flint because Flint is about community. Like how I move and how I operate and even the people that meet me now that I live in a metropolitan area, they're always like very impressed with my love of integrating into a community space and being communal and helping others with the intention to help and not the intention for clout.
Mhm.
And so they're always kind of like, wow, I don't meet people like you. There people always have an ulterior motive. They'll say
Mhm.
that. And my rearing in Flint, especially from just my mother, how my mother raised me and how Flint was, everybody kind of rallied around each other in my neighborhood from elementary. So it's in me recently, if you don't mind me saying this point, but I just turned 40 and my sister did a video tribute for me. And one of the people on my video tribute was my first grade teacher.
Oh.
And my first grade teacher has been in my life since the first grade. And she, commented on how I was always like loving on the people around me and being communal. And when I was in the third grade, she invited me and a few of her other special students to be a part of her wedding.
Teachers' pets or special students?
A little bit of A, a little bit of B. But that just goes to show the community of Flint as we were the blueprint for community schools.
Mhm.
And the community schools was really heavily involved in like the teachers
Mhm.
truly cared. I could go to a wedding. I went to my first grade teacher's home. Even as a first grader, we were, invited to her home. And that's when sometimes, and this teacher didn't live in my neighborhood, but back then your teachers actually lived in your neighborhood and it was real community. So I'm just community minded, and that just comes from being a native of Flint, Michigan. I'm just having a sense of just looking out for, the people around you and the people in your community.
That's awesome. I also think about my third grade teacher, whom I had for first, second, and third grade because of the experiment that I learned. It was a great experiment where they put all three grades into one class. So you had the same teacher year over year. You were able to experience different subjects at different grade levels. But the point is,
Mhm.
we went to her house too. And
Mm.
her house was the field trip that you get to go on because she had a lot of land. There
Mm.
was a creek, there were people were catching frogs. We did activities, there were horses. And so community is one thing that also comes to mind when I think of Flint. And so let's go down the list of all the things that we think about when we think of Flint because I am a woman of the world. I'm a global citizen now. And when I'm
Mhm.
in places and spaces, there's always that question. You already know what that question is. Where are you
Where are
from?
you from?
Where are you from? It depends on my mood. Sometimes I just say Michigan because I already know that when I say Flint, you from where the water at? Like
Immediately.
the water. I'm like,
It's like, "Oh my god, are people still dying?" Or they'll say, "Is the water still bad?"
no, I'm glad you made it.
I too am glad that I made it, but I also know a lot of people that died. So,
That
it's
is. It's not a joking matter. It's not
mm-mm,
funny. And if we're really being honest, there are many, many, many historically black cities that have lead problems in their water.
Jackson,
Jackson,
Mississippi.
Baltimore being another one of those places. And
Mhm,
so, as much as I would love to continue to inform people about the current status of the Flint water crisis, which I do, I would love for other things to be front of mind. As we mentioned, community, right? And I
mhm,
think even when I think of community, I know we talked about Clarissa Shields' movie, and in
mm.
that movie, when she took her medal to the pawn shop, and the guy called her mom,
Immediately,
like, oh
"What's
no,
she up here doing here?"
no, 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 no. That is some Flint stuff.
That's so Flint,
That is
because
that's
in a
Flint.
big metropolis like you and I both live in, they wouldn't have thought twice, like, "Yeah, give me that. Run that."
Exactly. Now, I hope that that wasn't like cinematic.
Liberties. Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's real to me because I know that when I'm in town, and my dad is from a small town in Alabama as well, and I go
Mhm,
there, and they're like, "Well, aren't you Lee's daughter?" Yes, I am. And
mhm,
so that same spirit carries you through Flint. And with that, I also want to talk about how GM shaped the experience of a lot of us too. Generationally, GM has been a place where Black and Brown people found opportunity to work and have a living
mhm,
wage and income. And so, another one of the misconceptions around Flint, and it's really not a misconception, it's a duality of Flint.
mhm,
Flint has a
mhm,
duality. There are very real things that are happening in Flint when it comes to
mhm,
our our median income and access to education, and
mhm,
people that live in poverty are very, very real.
mhm,
But GM did and has offered a lot of Black and Brown people to build families, build careers.
mhm,
And so I want to talk more about that because you and I are people who, middle class Flint,
mhm,
had experiences, went to university. And
mhm.
so that exists too. But education was also a part of
Mhm.
that community model. So tell me a little bit more about your youth experience and the exposure of things that you were privy to as a student in Flint, and how that's really been a guide for you and your career.
Oh, that's a great question. So my educational rearing comes from K through college, in Flint, kindergarten to my bachelor's degree, even though I started off at a historically Black college and university, Dillard University in New Orleans, which, that is a very communal place as well. So the transition from Flint to New Orleans was kind of seamless in that sense that those people wrapped their arms around you when you got there, knowing that you're someone far away from home. So that caveat there. But just starting off in elementary, my mom was a school parent. So one of those parents that's always volunteering at the school, like you, in the community room, just all like, I don't know if schools still have those, but we had community rooms in elementary. And in the community room, that's where you would go and vote when it was voting time. That's where you would go if they were making like a haunted house for like Halloween. All these things would happen in the community room. And so growing up in Flint, it was just always there. They used to have in Flint community schools a position called a community liaison. And they had a huge role. They were equally as in the eyes of the youth, they were equally as important as the principal, equally as important as your teacher or the assistant principal. And they provided activities for the youth, you know, before school, after school, we had skating parties. They had these certain groups called man to man, were teaching the young men how to be young men. They had stepping stones, teaching the young ladies how to be young ladies and teaching us etiquette, how to hold our forks, our spoons, how to present yourself at the table. So this was all happening in elementary, and like the community, rallied around you. I grew up in a neighborhood that at the time growing up initially it had mixed income. So when you talk about GM, you had GM workers, you had teachers, you had nurses, you had sanitation workers, or people who worked at Mott Community College or the University of Michigan Flint or Kettering University. So in the neighborhood, you would have mixed income. So then you would also have low income people that are, you said, generations of GM. You would have generations of people that are on welfare, or what they called it back then, ADC. So you had all of this going on, but people still commune with one another. It wasn't like this whole big separation of the haves and the have-nots.
Right.
So when you say that you're a citizen, a global citizen, or you can kind of move about in any way, I think that comes from being in Flint, because you could be going to school with a person whose dad is a physician, but you can also be going to school with somebody whose dad is the number one drug dealer.
Mhm.
And they're all going, they're going to get along. You know what I mean? It's not going to be like, oh, look at them. You know what I mean? Where in some communities, it's like there's a really huge hierarchy in that sense. And we didn't have that. So I did go to school with a person whose family made well over six figures, and went to school with people whose expected family contribution, their EFC, was zero. And so I think that just plays a huge part. So from, elementary, talking about, like I said, teachers living in your community, teachers really caring, bringing class pets, to middle school, to high school, being in the gifted program, I went to a fine arts school where theater and the fine arts were really heavily in the forefront. Reading, literacy, all of those things were important, which carried me on, into college, you know, being successful in college, because I knew how to get along with people from all walks of life, and I was educated, well.
That is so good, and it still centers around community.
Mhm.
And what you mentioned, even with the diverse experiences that you had at your school,
Mhm.
which Carmen Ainsworth is its own place, right? Flint
Mhm.
Township. People will say that's not Flint for real. I'm not about to do that today. But what's really true is that you did go to school with everyone, right? So
Mhm.
it wasn't a have and have nots. It's are you here or are we cool?
Correct.
The CEO of Tubi went to my high school. Okay. There's people who went to my high school that have played in Super Bowls and things like that. And there's people that didn't go to college at all, but they're still a part of that same community. And when I look at schools now, there's so much socioeconomic divide. And it's
Mhm.
so interesting because there's a design by it. But it
Mhm.
also makes me think about Flint's advocacy of civil rights community,
Mhm.
Flint's advocacy for fair housing, and how Flint was the first to have and vote on a public referendum defending fair housing in
Mhm.
1968. And what that means, and what was really important for that, is that people voted for that. And
Mhm.
it takes more than just those who are affected to vote. It takes a full community to vote and to agree.
That's right.
And enough people voted and agreed that we want fair housing across
Mhm.
Flint. We want everyone to be able to have access to a key necessity, which is shelter.
Mhm.
So that is a part of our history, and it's so important. And it's something that I would love to see Flint fall back into a little bit
Mhm.
more now, because that is how we were able to gain self-sufficiency.
Actually, I'll even take it as few years before, the time that you're mentioning, when we're saying we're advocating as a community. We're the reasons that unions exist. And I know in a lot of red states that's frowned upon, but unions help, we talked about GM. So it started the sit down strikes of 1936.
Let me tell you how many red shirts I got. I got some.
Day, right? Or white shirt day. And although, but we advocated for fair working conditions that we voted on and with the advent of unions, fair working conditions so that you're not working in deplorable conditions, fair working time so that you're just not overworked and underpaid and all those things. And that started in Flint. So where I live now, people always ask me like, what does it mean for you to be from Flint? And I'm like, we're always going to stand up for what is right or speak up against any injustice. The injustice could be like you shortchanged me at the corner store. You know what I mean? That's where we learn to speak up for ourselves. Like, no, like I'm supposed to get 35 cents back and you gave me 25 cents. Where's my dime? And we gonna argue up and down.
It's my money and I need it back. Give me my stuff.
We're gonna advocate for that dime and all of the, like that to me is the heart of Flint, no matter how small we think the injustice is. Even when you just, you reference the Clarissa Shields movie, we have so much to fight for. I think we have a way how we see things different from the purview of someone that didn't grow up here. And
It's a lot of pride, right? And
Mhm.
what I love most about that movie, and you can't go to movies with teenagers because they're staring at you like, "Are you crying?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm crying because that's real, girl."
Yeah,
That's
right, because we know those streets, we know Clarissa, even Clarissa herself, right? She was just on Tamron Hall and she was just explaining how, like, I'm not like other boxers where I just put my fans to the side. She was like, I'm shaking hands, I'm kissing babies, I'm hugging everybody, I'm going. Because without y'all, there's no me. Y'all lifting me up. Even when you think about Mateen Cleaves, NBA player, he's gonna I've been in so many places with my team where he'll buy everything, like food on me, things like that. Like we're like that. We're very like we're giving people. We're very giving. I'll say that. Whether it's our time, our talents, our spirit, a helping hand. That's something that maybe people don't know about Flintstones, but you said you're a global citizen. I come back to that because there's nowhere where you can go. Flintstones leave a footprint wherever we go. Like literally, I have a friend that lives in Paris who has a bar from Flint in Paris.
yep.
Like we're just, and I always, whenever I'm highlighting someone in Flint, especially on my Instagram, I always say we are everywhere and we do everything. So we do magazines, we do fashion.
News lady is from Flint.
It's from Flint, all right? Atlanta, when you think about markets, that's a huge market. And for someone to make it from a town like Flint to be in that large of a market as an anchor woman, that's phenomenal. One of our AKET sisters, another Flint thing, we had community groups, is a designer for Levi Strauss. You know what I mean? So one of a Flintstone is an assistant coach for the LA, what's that, Chargers, in NFL? Yeah, Aubrey. So, we got a little hand in everything, but that's the thing about Flint. You can make it, we always say, if you can make it in Flint, you can make it any because it is a tough town, the toughest town around since 1855.
Is it a tough town? Is it a tough town, or you just not minding your business?
And that's where I feel like FAFO came to be.
Listen here, to this day, I go anywhere in Flint, and I just mind my business. I respect, but also when we talk about being a global citizen, I
Mhm.
always tell someone I'm good in any hood. When I first moved to Atlanta, I told this story on Threads like a couple weeks ago. I lived in various like sub communities, sub neighborhoods of Atlanta, and the first thing that I did to get acclimated to the city was respond to the YNs at the gas station. How you doing, Miss Lady? I'm doing fine.
I'm good.
Don't be too pressed, but respond. Why? Why did I befriend them? Because they the ones who know. They were the ambassadors to me. I didn't go to a big city. Well, a part of my strategy professionally, of course, I want to be upwardly mobile and meet people
Mhm,
that are professional, but it was very, and it still is very, very, very important, whether I'm a temporary traveler or a permanent resident, to know the people that live there. When people
mhm,
are in Atlanta and they're like, I don't have any friends as natives, how is that possible? How did you choose to come to somebody else's land and did not even find
mhm,
anybody else that's from here to give you the
mhm,
history, to tell you how things are, for you to pour back into them because they were here first? Not even
mhm,
like a colonizer, but the
mhm.
YNs. Let me go back to the YN. That was my welcoming committee because that is how I learned the root of Atlanta and just
Right.
how deep things really run. I've been at folks' grandma house for holidays and cookouts,
Mhm.
and people over here talking about y'all cooking at apartments. That's because you don't have any friends who are
Yep.
really from Atlanta, right? And so that community aspect is something that I literally take everywhere I go because it is deeply ingrained. And I don't know, there was no one moment to where a light bulb went off in my head as a child, like, oh, I gotta protect my community. But
Mhm,
you and I were doing hashtag lunch bag, and since 2014 have made
mhm.
over 5,000 lunches for people who are unhoused. And when I started that, I was unhoused.
Yep, I remember. I
I
remember, and that
everywhere.
wasn't even the language, like, unhoused is new language.
That's the cute language, okay?
Mhm.
I didn't have anywhere to live, but I was making sure
Right,
that people ate. And
right.
that is how important it goes to show that from a societal perspective, Americans being able to, reach out to another. And even if we make it more closed group, more Black folks, we can do
Mhm,
a lot more with each other when we reignite the enthusiasm for community and build community. And you can start small, right? I know
mhm,
that you're a part of my community and I feel like I'm a part of your community, but
mhm.
that's just that.
I like how you I like how you said that about putting yourself in the community and getting to know the natives. I remember a few years ago on social media, Akbar got into it with, I believe, Tokyo Vanity. And what she said to her was, "You flew here and I grew here." And that statement, ended up becoming into, the urban lexicon. I grew here, you flew here. But that was important to show that her saying that is like, yeah, like you said, to the point of you're coming here as a colonizer and not getting to know the people that actually grew here. And you can build better relationships and have a better networking experience if you show homage or pay respect to the people who are already there on the land. Right? Because we see when you don't do that, what happens? Violence ensues, hostile environments ensues. You don't have there, like you said, people saying they don't have a friend. You don't have a friend. You don't have a friendship. You don't have nobody to look out for you because if they, hey, Miss Lady, they see you again and somebody and you were kind to them, and they see the person that wasn't there the other day may try to scam you or do anything to you, they could be like, oh no, she cool.
And that's
But
what
if
I
you
needed.
but if you come with the attitude like, and
Mm.
then the person that didn't see you that day, they'd be like, man, yeah, she rude, she a B word, or whatever the case may be. So, and I think when you say that, and this is just not unique to Flint, but the YNs, like to your point, growing up, I used to see a group of dudes standing up at the corner store. So as a safety measure, you do want to, hey, if they speak to you, speak back
Exactly.
for safety reasons.
For safety reasons. So protection from the YNs is what I wanted, but it's also similar to the interesting dichotomy of being someone who went to Carmen Ainsworth, and then there's Flint schools, and there's the studious little unassuming type girl, and those guys, right? Like I was always a friend. I was always a friend. Listen, your secrets is safe with me. I will
Mhm.
help you get out of your hood situation. What do we need to we need a business plan? Believe in your dreams, boo. Do you believe in
YNs always just need that
it?
girl to believe in them.
Everybody needs somebody to believe in them, and I don't
Everybody needs somebody to just believe in whatever it is. They just need a little bit of
know. That's what was wrong with Tasha and Ghost. Like she just wanted him to be a YN, and he wanted
forever.
no.
You always want them to elevate. You don't want them to stay YN forever. There's no retirement plan when you're a YN forever.
It's not.
Because you can't be in the streets when you know what I mean? When you got carpal tunnel. You just
Like I'm 45, man. I ain't got time for this. Let's talk
your
about
diabetes is acting up. You gotta have a different plan. So
that is
yeah.
right. So yeah, so aside from Flint giving you the not only the audacity and the confidence and the connectivity to navigate through communities, I know that you also do community work where you are. So again, I definitely want to underscore that
Mm.
as being a part of Flint's what's the word I want to use? Like Flint just gives you that je ne sais quoi to just
Mhm.
be a change maker, right? And so I'm very, very grateful for that being a part of my experience. What is something else that you have experienced that people don't know or don't appreciate about being from Flint?
That they don't appreciate for being about from Flint.
Or
This is
someone
this
may
is
not know. Or someone may not know is
oh, okay. Some things that we appreciate or things that people might not know. Our ability to just have a good time.
okay.
We know how, like, I know people be like, Atlanta turns up, but it's something about Flint where you could just like go riding around and just go sit on people's porches. Like
Okay.
going to ride around, hanging out on the porch, having a, as they say, a kickback, having a taco party. Like
Mhm.
taco parties is real.
Very
I
real.
always be like, I don't know if black people that took over tacos from Mexicans, especially the ones in Flint, because Flint is a taco. We gonna taco it down. We gonna have a taco party.
Yes, we will.
And we're gonna have a fish fry on a Friday. You know what I mean? So I love that. But something that people may not know about Flint is that, like, especially when we were growing up, the teen step shows, the teen parties. I think that when you talked about like our community work, even in the communities that we live in, because we're able to see all sides of Flint, like we look at Flint through a lens where we know it's just not like we just talked about earlier. We know it's not all impoverished. And we know that it's not all middle class. We know the levels of Flint, the different ways. So sometimes it's depicted in a certain way because of Michael Moore. I remember when he did Roger and Me. And I think we talked about this on one of my podcasts. I went to summer camp in Boston, and one of my fellow campmates was from New Jersey, and he was like, "We just watched Roger and Me in my social studies class. Are you all still eating rabbits?" Now, Roger and Me was like 85 or in the 80s. I went to summer camp. This is like '02, and it's like, "Are y'all still eating rabbits?" So I think that we are able to kind of move about and do community work because we also saw how GM leaving affected us. So we always wanted to make the community that we lived in better. And we always heard the people that were older than us talking about Flint's heyday. Like it was always like this nostalgic way, like the way my mom grew up in the 70s. So she always talked about how fabulous and fun Flint was, right? So then we're growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s and we're having an experience, but it's different than their experience from 20 years ago because they see what was a decline. So I feel like we were always just trying to get back into making Flint better in this sense of making where you live better. So when we move to the new communities that we're in, we want to be a part of whatever it is that's going to make it better, whether it's, being with the youth or helping with the environment or, or literacy or any of those things, whatever is going to make something better, because we know when people we talked about we did hashtag lunch bag. We know when those basic needs are met, whether it's food, shelter, or when we talked about just having somebody in your corner to know that somebody cares that helps a community to thrive. And so we want to make sure we're doing that wherever we are.
Yep. Yep. And that's so true. And, even going back to what you were saying about the different lived experience that you
Hmm.
have in Flint, when the water crisis came about, people were like, you live in Flint Township, like that ain't got nothing to do with you. And I'm like, I don't care. These are my friends. These are
Hmm.
businesses, business owners, things that impact me, right? And so that need to kind of lift as you climb and pour back
Hmm.
when you are more than filled or in overflow to give back home is definitely something that is a persistent spirit about
Hmm.
Flint. And so on those same tenets, what would you say to young people living in Flint right now who do not have the millennial experience, the ex boomer or any other generational experience of Flint, that are living in Flint right now that see more of the decline than
Mm.
prosperity? What would you say to them right now?
I'm going to say to the young people in Flint now to still get involved. If you don't see something that is happening that you want to happen, then you create that space, right? I want to tell them to participate in the crim, whether you're going to be a runner or a walker or you just want to volunteer. Get involved in some of the things that have already been established in the community, right? So if you know someone has an event, go support that event. Don't necessarily try to compete. I see a lot of, that happening with the young people. It's like they're selling, we'll just say they're selling plates. So let me just start selling plates. As opposed to saying, is that something that you truly, really want to do?
Yeah.
Or are you just trying to, make a cash grab or be in competition with someone? So support what is already in place. Create what it is that you don't see. Take care of the environment around you. Hang out in downtown. Go to the farmers market. Go to the places where you feel that you may feel like that's not for me. Go try and experience different things. Like, when we were growing up, we had the Beans and Leave Cafe where you could go to a poetry slam or, different things like that. You might not feel like, I think sometimes when you come from a certain environment, like sometimes somebody might be like, "Oh, you're talking white," or that activity is what white people do, or that activity is for a certain type of person, right? We've heard these types of things. Don't Young people don't look at it in those ways. Look at it as I'm going to experience something new. Just
Yep.
try to experience something new that you've never done before. And I think that'll make their experience 10 times better. And just taking care of their environment. If they see a lot of trash around town, create a cleanup day. Get your friends and make it a cleanup day. There's things that we did like that all the time. Like we want to get together, let's have a day where we all hang out together. We had a day where we had a vision board party. And certain things don't have to be an event. Like we live in a time where everybody is like, I gotta make it an event. I gotta put it on Eventbrite, and I gotta charge you $25.
Everybody wear black, orange, and green, but not too much green, forest green, because we're gonna
Right. I want to say like everything don't have to be so
aesthetic.
coordinated. You
Yes.
know what I mean? Like for the aesthetic or for social media. Like let it be for the fun of it. When we were doing hashtag lunch bag all those times, like just bringing community together, it was uniform in certain aspects, but once we all got in the space, it was organic things happening, genuine conversations, music happening, laughing, asking questions. One of the aspects that we did in hashtag lunch bag was we had a station where we wrote sticky notes to who was going to receive that lunch box or that lunch bag. And you're bouncing off ideas with people next to you, like, what did you say? Or what did you say? Or this would be a nice thing to say. So I would just tell the young people to create community, create fun, and the fun not just for this, because when the cameras and all of that is out, it just takes away from the organic, fun experience.
Build. I cannot unsee
Build.
opportunity when I go home. Folks
Mhm.
may see, buildings for sale, dilapidated spaces, stuff that might need to be raised, but it doesn't matter. I can literally
Mhm.
in my brain see an entirely different building there. I can see homes there. I can see a townhome
Mhm.
community. I can see Mona's like with a reno outside.
Mhm.
Like I see
Mhm.
that. So when I go home, I'm like, wait till I get my money, right?
Money,
Because I can't
right?
wait to pour back in to my hometown. And so I charge young people because I'm young, but I ain't that young. So I
Mhm.
charge younger people in their mid-career, if you live in Flint, even if you don't live in Flint, to consider where you can reinvest in Flint
Mhm.
because Flint will be different. Flint is going to be different very,
Mhm.
very, very soon. And we want it to still be um uh be reminiscent of the
Mhm.
community that we just talked about because other
Mhm.
people may have other interests for the people of
Mhm.
Flint. And if we want to retain this trajectory of Black excellence and civic engagement that we are used to, we have to continue to do that, but also
Mhm.
be a part of the economic progress as well that is inevitable, right? As markets
Mhm.
are shifting, people are going from big cities to small cities and coming home.
Mhm.
Make sure
Mhm.
that whatever is being made in Flint is for the people. That is what
That's right.
my wish is for Flint.
Just to piggyback off that, I just went to a comedy show 2 weeks ago. And, in comedy and humor, there's always a bit of truth. And one of the comedians he said, millennials, y'all got to stop reminiscing on the 90s and the 2000s in the sense that you wanted to go back that way because it'll leave you depressed. And he had a funny thing to go with that. But I say that to say a lot of times, like you said, the boomers and the millennials and the Gen Xers, all of us, we have a nostalgic feeling of Flint that we want to get back. To your point, to the young people, it's going to look different. It's not going to look how we may have described. It can look even better than that. It can be even better. So we don't have to look at the past as doom and gloom, as something like, oh, we're never going to get that back. We can always forge forward and make it even better, even hyper, even funner in that sense. So, we live in a global society now where we can put a hashtag in TikTok and it comes up. We can put a hashtag in YouTube and it comes up. So, yeah, use those ideas from other communities. And that's the great thing about Flint. We were the model for so many practices that take place across the United States because we were the first community schools, right? So use that same innovation that we had and build with other communities and maybe take ideas from other communities and bring it back to your community. That's what, a lot of Flint stones do. We have lived and gone other places and we come back and we bring those ideas to Flint, like Brandon Quarter does the midnight brunch. He did that because he went to California, saw it done there, and was like, let me bring that back to my community. So it's okay to, look at other communities and say, hey, I want to do that here or build upon it so it may look slightly different because the constituents where you are not the constituents there, or the resources there might be different here, but you can still do it and make it and cater it or, to
Yeah,
your community.
sometimes I feel like a foreign immigrant, right?
Mhm.
Where people are like, oh, I have to send money back home to my family, or I have to bring this back to my family. I'm going back
Mhm.
to where I come from. I think
Mhm.
the perception of me might include a little bit of that because
Mhm.
I haven't been everywhere. I've been everywhere I wanted to go. But I am always like, I wonder if we can do that in Flint.
Mhm.
What would that
Mhm.
take? I'm calling Alex, I'm calling Deandra, I'm calling people like, do you think this will work?
Mhm.
Because
Right.
that it just goes back to community. It just goes back to community. And having that spirit of innovation is just so key. I was refreshing myself on some Black history around the owner who started WDZZ and him
Mhm.
being a Michigan State grad, which I did not know. He is a double
Mhm.
Michigan State grad And that was my first internship. That was my first media experience. When I was 17, I
Mhm.
didn't really dig through the history, but knowing that that is also a part of my career trajectory, it just makes
Mhm.
so much sense. And I'm so grateful for those that have come before us that just was like, "Nah, I wanna fight for this. This is what I wanna this is what I want,
Mhm.
this is what I want to have, and I'm gonna have it no matter what," and that is the spirit of Flint. So
That's
people
right.
are like, "Oh, you're so aggressive. Oh my god, calm down."
I
No.
think that's the other part of Flint that when you use the terminology aggressive, we live in environments where they're not direct.
Mm,
And so they'll call it they'll walk around the corner and down the street and across the pond to get to the point. And when you're from Flint, it's always a sense of urgency that we're straight to the point. We,
please.
as I always say, we give it straight no chaser. And it's not that we're rude, it's not that we're aggressive. It's just like, let's cut out all pretense. Let's get
What
this is what it is.
what
So, and I like that about us. I like that because I don't like things sugar coated. And this comes from Flint. I always tell people when someone says, "Do you want the good news or bad news first?" I always say bad news first. Rip the band-aid off of me so then I can know how to move forward. And I think that is the spirit of Flint. We've had the band-aid ripped off of us so many times that we're just like, we want to heal and we're like Wolverine. We want to get to the healing. Okay, that happened. Let's get to the solutions. And I think that speaks to the heart of Flintstones.
love that. And with that, I'm gonna let this episode marinate, Tanae. Thank you. I love that point. And my
Ooh.
baby said, "Hey, hey, girl." So again, this has just been such a wonderful conversation today. I always appreciate your perspective, your expertise, and of course, our
Thank you.
shared love of Flint. And that is something that I value in our friendship. And love to see us continue to live in and exude that spirit in everywhere that we may live and go in our life. So thank you again for coming on the show and talking a little bit about the 810.
Thank you for having me on the Zaneta Show. I hope it grows and thrives and flourishes. This is our space.
Amen.
This is our
Thank
space.
you. Thank you so much. Well, until next time, friend, and everyone else, have a good night.